And a happy Tuesday evening to all of you Bills Mafia and football fans alike. My name is Joe DeRosa. You can find me on Twitter at show_DeRosa. My name, tagline for tonight, is Joe Heaton Cambria because we are going to be singing the songs of praise for our Buffalo Bills young stars. And I did an episode similar to this a few months back where we highlighted some of the young players, but I thought it'd be fun to revisit this topic post-draft and talk about some players that we have some high expectations for going into 2024. And joining me tonight is a friend of the show, a good buddy of mine, Mr. Josh McCarty of Bills Chat. And the two of us will be ranking our 5 favorite young players on the offensive and defensive side of the ball for the Buffalo Bills going into this upcoming year. So for all of you in our chat tonight, follow along, comment some of your favorite players, and most importantly, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Under Review. And without further ado, let's go.
Previous play will go under review.
Once again, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Under Review. And Mr. Josh McCarty, it's been a few weeks, but welcome back to the show. I am happy to have you here and appreciate your time. How you doing tonight, my man?
Doing great, Joe. Always good to be on with you. Always good to be on Cover One. Appreciate the invite, and I'm excited about it.
I'm excited too, and Ryan seems to be excited as well. Yeah, love Cover One, greatest channel of all time. Love that praise, Ryan. Thank you so much for watching, for being here. And Josh, I mean, it's been, post-draft, the discussions surrounding the team have been a mix. You've seen people that have praised the draft. You've seen people that have been kind of whatever about it. I know you guys did a draft show on your channel and had a very funny reaction to when the Bills traded out. I happened to be there in person to see that, and I will tell you, I watched that clip. That reaction that you guys had was very similar to what the group had when we were there at the stage and saw the Bills logo turn into the Chiefs highlight reel. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, just first and foremost, what are your thoughts on the Bills draft in general and kind of some of the young talent that they've added to this team after a few weeks, or I guess a week or two of marinating on it?
Haven't we all had enough of the Bills being on the Chiefs highlight reel? So my reaction is, I think given the nature of the offseason, and there's been some pain this offseason, we've had to say goodbye to a lot of familiar faces, Tre'Davious White, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Mitch Morse, familiar names that were staples of this team for the last 5 years. And then obviously the big one, Stephon Diggs. A lot of those names we got rid of were, I think, for as much performance reason as financial reason. But I think for the fan base, we really needed the draft to kind of lift us up. And in a lot of ways, I think we needed some sizzle. So when the draft was getting closer and there was rumors of, the Bills could go up for Rome Odunze, or, the Bills could trade up for Brian Thomas Jr., or maybe they're going to double dip at wide receiver, that would have been sizzle. And what we didn't get was sizzle. What we got, I think, was water and vegetables. Now, look, water and vegetables is very vital to staying healthy, but it's not going to excite you. But I think when you look under the hood of this Bills roster, there were 36 players before the draft under contract for 2025. And the Bills have been living in this world where they have been filling out the bottom end of their roster with 1-year deals on veteran players. And that's no way to live, because even on a minimum deal, a veteran player is quite a bit more expensive than a player on a rookie deal. And then when you hit on a player on a rookie deal, like a Terrell Bernard, you have a superstar who's playing for pennies on the dollar. And that's what I think the Bills did. They attacked areas of weakness. They attacked depth issues. I don't have an issue with any of the players they took at any of the value spots they took. I'm not going to lie to you and say, like, after the second round, every time they took a player that wasn't a receiver, I was unhappy on draft night. Like, I will raise my hand and say that I wanted them to double dip. But wherever they got the players, I thought it was appropriate value. And I think all in all, Brandon Beane did what he needed to do roster management wise, which was fill holes, fill out the bottom end of his roster, and draft 10 players that I think all have a very good look at making this team.
That water and vegetables metaphor is perfect. It's perfect. I haven't heard it said by anybody, and I love that because 100% right. And he takes a sip of water, as I mentioned the metaphor. Look at that, on brand, wearing it. No, honestly, I got some water here too. It's just sparkling. I also want to preface, because I had this can last week too. It's not a beer. I didn't clarify that it wasn't beer, and I hope people didn't think I was drinking beer live. But that water and vegetables comment is perfect, because what it did actually feel like in every round that they picked was truly addressing positions of need, dispersing those assets evenly, something that I felt like a lot of us were kind of saying going into this draft. I hope they do that. I hope that they can attack it. There's a lot of positions of need, a lot of turnover, a lot of vacancies with veteran leadership going, and some holes in the depth. I feel like they did that pretty well with some players on the board that I really liked, including, I like Coleman. He wasn't my first choice. I said it when we were live. It was someone that I thought would probably not fit the profile, but they got a receiver, an ex-receiver that they're, trying to work to a boundary role. So it made sense, and I'm excited to see what he does. They obviously tried to fortify D-line depth. They tried to find a new safety hybrid role with Cole Bishop. A lot of different things they did in this draft that I feel like, even if it isn't the sexiest of picks, every single pick they made, when you look at it in a vacuum, makes a ton of sense. And there is an upside to a point where you could see actual contributions beyond just special teams for a good majority of who they picked in this draft. Will that actually happen? I don't know, and I won't bank on everybody having a starting or rotational role on this team, because that's usually not how it goes. But like you said, Josh, it's different now when you're talking about the amount of turnover you have and trying to build this roster up a bit organically than years past, because it's not a matter of we're looking to just fill holes in the back end of the roster because we have a bunch of rookie contracts, so let's just go sign this veteran and let him take the spot, and that's it. They actually need this younger depth to step up in a capacity. And that's kind of what motivated tonight's episode of talking about the young players, was because it's not like in years past. It's now, hey, this edge rusher that we took in a later round might actually be getting meaningful snaps in a big game for us. So I like that point you made. I'm really excited to get into it. And for those of you in our chat, we have both put together a list of our 5 players on offense and defense. So we're going to go offense first, defense second, that we think are going to be big contributors, someone that we're excited to watch. And the only rule I had for Josh was that it had to be someone that during the season was 25 or younger. So we're talking young. Now, this does not have to exclusively be someone from the draft, but rather draft picks mixed in with some of the young talent that we have accrued over the seasons. And before we start, Josh, this is awesome. We got a friend from Alaska here. That is awesome. Listen, cover one across the globe. Buff Everett, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate this. And guys, if you're watching from Alaska, if you're watching from New York, if you're watching from Jupiter, I appreciate you. So Josh, let's get this one going, and let's start with offense, and let's start with your 5th. So we'll go from 5 to 1. Most important young player that you are excited to watch.
So, you know me, Joe, I'm a little weird. I play by your rules, but then I kind of make my own rules in the process. So most important to me is not necessarily like ranking them 1 to 5 as far as like who the best players are. And I think that's going to be evident in my 5th one, who is James Cook. I think James Cook is better than a top 5 most important young player on the offense, but I think there's a chance that we've seen what James Cook is, which is an excellent Pro Bowl level running back. But last season, particularly under Joe Brady, he had 4.7 yards per carry, 2.7 yards after contact, which is excellent, 2.6% air yards for the team, which is ridiculous, and a 9.8 target share. And all of that went up under Joe Brady. And to me, that's a clue that James Cook is going to be even more involved this year, especially when you look at the vacated targets by Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis. So for the word important to me is I know what I think I know what James Cook is. As long as he sustains that or continues to get better, I think he's going to be exactly what I expect him to be, which is an excellent football player, an ascending player, a Pro Bowl level talent that can help you in the rushing game and the passing game. But for where this offense is, where I think it's going, I didn't want to leave him off the list. I don't have as many questions, or I don't think he's as much of a projection as the next 4 guys on my list that I'm going to get into. I feel pretty safe about what I'm expecting from him this year, barring injury.
That's totally fair. I have Cook on this list, and since you said his name, I'll spoil it. He's actually my number 2. I find him to be the second most important young player that I have for offense and someone that I'm looking forward. And all the stats you listed are a huge part of his game. And I really like that you made the point about Joe Brady in the second half of the year, really leaning on him. But I think that's why I actually have him higher up on the list, is because I think the Bills view James Cook in a light that a lot of fans wanted him to be when we drafted him, right? They wanted that dual threat, receiving back that could also run really well. And James Cook runs really well, specifically to the edges, but also has that pass catching ability. Joe Brady has absolutely utilized that skill set to the maximum in a way that we have all wanted it to see. And what I think you're going to see, like you alluded to, Josh, is a very big lean on James Cook this year, so much to the point that when you look at how the Bills drafted this year and they didn't take that second receiver, I genuinely believe that is because a big portion of the target share is going to go to running backs, with the majority of that going to James Cook and another bit of it going to Ray Davis, who can also catch out of the backfield, and Ty Johnson. I think they view James Cook in such a way that he's beyond just being like a young producing running back, but rather an integral gear in this offensive machine. And just to further along the stats, his second year in the NFL, he was I have my stats all jumbled up on the screen, but regular season and playoffs mixed, he was second in the NFL in rushing with 1,262 yards. If you just did regular season only, it was fourth, which is still really impressive for a second-year running back. And then sixth in receiving yards for running backs with 472. If you just did regular season, he's still seventh. So he is getting meaningful amounts of yards. They are feeding him the ball, and he is being implemented in multiple ways, whether that's out of the backfield, whether that's on a check down, or whether that's on a leak or a wheel route going up the field. You've seen the really concerted effort to make him a vital part of the offense, and it's why he is my number 2, and he is on your list in general. I will bounce back to my number 5, and that's Khalil Shakir, who had a productive second half of the season. And, why I put him as number 5 and why I think he is 5 and not higher up is only because I think now that you added Curtis Samuel and, you're introducing him with Dalton Kincaid and you're adding him with other members of this offense, he's still important to me. I just don't think he's like the top 3, most important piece, but he's going to have a huge role. And my question is really, how much more are they going to throw him outside this time? Because he played more in the slot than he did out wide, but he still had 184 wideout snaps. And an interesting stat I found per PFF, when targeted over 10 plus yards, between 10 and 19 yards, it was an 8 for 11, 144 yard and 1 touchdown return. When over 20 plus, and this is a very small sample size, but 5 for 6 with 194 yards and 1 touchdown. That vertical ability is there. And while we do have a small sample size to work off of, there have been moments where Khalil Shakir has been productive down the field. And since they didn't double dip, and since Keon Coleman is really what they're considering their true X right now, how much more are they going to lean on Shakir to play a boundary role? It's something I'm looking forward to seeing. It's something I think he could possibly do. And I'm excited to watch him ball out this year. And that's why he's my number 5. Josh, number 4, who do you got?
So my number 4, I have Shakir on my list. He's a little bit higher for me, I will say. My number 4, unless you would rather me just get into Shakir right now. I don't know.
Whatever you're feeling, man.
All right.
I want this to be free flowing.
Yeah, we can continue the Shakir conversation because the reason why he's quite a bit higher to me is ever since Stephon Diggs was traded, I've been trying to figure out the why. And I think you can read into some of the personality conflicts that we all have heard about. This is a positive show. We're not going to go into that. But I think one thing that I've tried to do this offseason is really take a deep dive into what changed when Joe Brady became offensive coordinator. And you can look at Diggs' numbers and really see that over that stretch from week 11 on, it wasn't the one-man show that it was under Ken Dorsey, where it was Diggs and then everybody else. It was actually a 3-man show, and 4 if you want to include James Cook, but it was Shakir with the most yards, and then Diggs, and then Kincaid. Mm-hmm. You also saw Khalil Shakir go from about 25 snaps per game under Dorsey to 51 snaps per game under Joe Brady. I think that along with wanting to just kind of move on from the Diggs era and believing in the depth of this wide receiver draft class and liking Curtis Samuel and Kincaid, I think there's a big belief in that building of what Khalil Shakir can be. His usage under Joe Brady was doubled as far as snaps go. and his usage on the outside went up a little bit. It wasn't super significant. He went from like 25 to 29% on the outside, but I think he can line up all over the formation, like you alluded to. He's not just a slot receiver, and he's a guy that Josh Allen trusts. He's a guy that Josh Allen always brings up in interviews, and I really do believe that when Joe Brady was hired as offensive coordinator, they got on the same page with Josh Allen about what they wanted to be as an offense. So I think Khalil Shakir is going to have a vital role in this offense going forward. I think there is a chance, and he might even be my betting favorite to lead this team in targets when it's all said and done. And that's wild when you think about the fact that two of Josh Allen's pass catchers are a 33rd overall pick and then a first-round pick from the year before in Dalton Kincaid. So I think that's how much they think of Khalil Shakir, and it's hard to deny how much more productive he was with the OC change.
I love that take, and I think it's very possible. I mean, there was been, I would say, since his rookie season, and as we wanted it to be, a consistent lean on Khalil Shakir, especially in the second half of the year. And it wasn't just a matter of force feeding him the ball for the sake of getting the ball to a different receiver. Khalil Shakir was explosive. Khalil Shakir was clutch in multiple situations at the back half of the year. I could think to him being in the right spot in the Chargers game when they sent 0 and Josh floated that ball to him and he nearly scored a touchdown. I could think of the screen that he took down the field against Miami and that later deep ball that I think Josh was like a 20-yard pass on the boundary. He's been clutch. And honestly, had Dawkins not gotten pushed back into Josh in the playoff game, Shakir probably had a second touchdown that would have put the Bills ahead. I'm sorry to reopen that wound, but just to place the emphasis on how much more he's been contributing to the team. I really think that this possibility of him being able to be out wide more often, but also, again, rotate in the mix and slot if you don't have Kincaid doing it, if you don't have Samuel doing it, whoever it may be, I think he's going to do pretty well. And I think that, like you said, Josh has built this trust with him that they really needed last year, and I hope can carry over into this season, because a big part of what I think Josh's flaw was last year was not really trusting everything in the middle of the field. And there were a lot of reasons for that. If you want to blame Dorsey and putting too much on the receivers to make that decision on the fly, which in turn stresses Allen out, then you got to look at it this year as, now if you have Shakir and that rapport built up and these two are in sync right away, which I hope they will be, that could be a huge boost to an offense that's also trying to work in second year Dalton Kincaid and also trying to make Keon Coleman a feature piece in his rookie season. Like, cohesion benefits everything. I think Khalil Shakir is going to be a very big part of what this offense does this year. I didn't rank him higher only because, again, I feel like there are other targets that I will mention as we go further in the list that I think will have a little more emphasis on them and be a little bit more of importance to this offense's productivity. But I think Khalil Shakir is a vital part of what they want to do. So I'm in full agreement with you, Josh. And I am curious to hear who you got next on your list.
So Khalil Shakir was my 3. My 4 was Osiris Torrance. And what a home run pick that was. And you want to talk about eating your vegetables and drinking your water. There was a school of thought that he was the best guard in the draft class last year, and the Bills got him in the second round. And there were some attractive wide receiver options on the board, like Jalen Hyatt, who has that speed the Bills have been chasing. But I think they stuck to their plan of protect Josh Allen. He's the only player on the entire offense to play every single snap last year. An offensive line that was much improved. And now you look at, they're going to go into a little bit more of a transition. 4 of the 5 guys are back, but some of the positions are changing. You now have McGovern going to center. That's going to put a little bit more on his plate now, playing next to McGovern instead of Mitch Morse. But when you project it forward, you look at the fact that Spencer Brown is going into a contract year, and I think that's going to be a tough decision for the Bills. I think he's kind of like Tremaine Edmonds, where it's right on that line of, do you want to make him a mega money guy or not? Having Osiris Torrance for the next 3 years, when you look at the guard market and you saw what Robert Hunt made on a rookie second round deal, is going to be an absolute bargain for this team as they move into the next phase of Josh Allen. And you have to have the bargains to cancel out some of the free agent additions I do expect the Bills to make beginning as soon as next year, as they kind of rebuild the new nucleus of this team. But I think Osiris Torrance is one of those guys, maybe like this new era, like where the old era is the Mitch Morse, the Jordan Poyer. Maybe he's like the new era's version of Deion Dawkins, where you draft him, you develop him, and then 10 years later, he's one of your highest paid players, but you just watch him grow from the ground up. It was a home run pick, and I think he stabilizes the right guard situation for the Bills, at least for his rookie deal.
Yeah, Osiris Torrance is my number 4 as well. Again, as a rookie, he played every snap, and you hope that durability can continue. But to get that out of a rookie guard when you desperately needed stability at that position is so huge, and I am very happy that he did. He let up only 3 sacks on 775 pass blocking attempts, but there were more quarterback hits and 39 hurries. So I'm hoping that in his second year, he can get a little more comfortable in that role and maybe, anchor himself a little bit better in pass pro and provide just more stability in front, especially like you said. And this is a great point that I didn't even think of when I put this list together. It is the last year of Spencer Brown's contract. And that does have to be taken into account when you talk about the future construction of this offensive line. And now knowing that Osiris Torrance is holding that spot down for you for at least the next 3 seasons is really, really huge. And it is something that I think when you talk about trying to keep this team's offense afloat, trying to keep whatever window you believe in open and really just making them competitive, then building it from the trenches and maintaining stability with a good young core in guys like Connor McGovern, who you bring in, who's still relatively young. Obviously, potentially having Edwards, who's still in his 20s, or maybe you keep McGovern at guard and then you have Van Pran Granger take over at center, and who's also a very young player. And then you implement Osiris Torrance into that mix, who's also young. And you got 3 important positions of people under 30 years old to maintain Josh Allen's clean pocket. And the hopes that if Spencer Brown walks, you either replace that position with someone young or you can retain Brown, who's still under 30 as well. I like the way that they've built up this offensive line, but getting Osiris Torrance, like you said, was a home run pick. To have him fall to you at 60, even if he isn't the most conventional of Aaron Kromer prototypes, was just a big steal for the Buffalo Bills. And even if he wasn't a perfect pass protector this year, even if there were times where he got fooled on stunts, there is a lot to work with the floor of him from his rookie season that I think a year 2 leap should be expected of Osiris Torrance. And if he takes that, even in a moderate stride, it is going to pay off dividends for this Bills offensive line. And I think that stability, like we've talked about, pass protecting for Josh in a year where there's uncertainty with his skill positions, with his receivers, and trying to build cohesion in that, solid protection up front will help with that as well. And he's why it's my number 4, your number 4, and I'm glad that you mentioned him. So Osiris Torrance, integral part of the Bills offense. But you said your number 3 was Khalil Shakir. Did you, or was it,
Yep,
did I have
Shakir.
it right? Okay, so we talked about Shakir, we talked about Cook, and we talked about Torrance. So skip ahead to your next one that we haven't mentioned yet.
Number 2, the second round draft pick from this year, the Bills' first pick, Keon Coleman. While they have a lot on his plate this year, but I get the feeling he's up for it. And I was like you, Joe. He was not my first choice when the board reset going into day 2. I was an AD Mitchell guy. As the draft went on and I saw what the Bills were trying to do, and I heard people that cover the team speak to this, I think the Bills, I know you're a baseball guy, they went up to the plate. They did not want to strike out. They were looking to hit doubles, and if the ball goes over the fence, great. And I think there were enough concerns about AD Mitchell off the field, personality, taking plays off. And we've only gotten to know Keon Coleman over the last week and a half. And this is a guy that either he's putting on the biggest front in the history of fronts, or he absolutely breathes and lives football. He's already reached out to Andre Reed. I was concerned about the scouting report on Coleman, the 4.6 at the combine, but then you kind of look under the hood and you realize that the GPS tracking that the teams prioritize way more than the stopwatch at the combine has a more of like a 4.5 guy. And then you look at some of the other drills, like the gauntlet drill at the combine. He was the fastest since Puka Nacua and one of the fastest in recent years. And you look at some next gen stats and you look at the various route trees. He was the fastest in the class at slants, and he has plenty of game speed. I am curious how he fits into the X role because I think there is some concern. But I will say, Joe, I went back and watched him very closely after the Bills took him because I was nervous doing it. And I was prepared to be very underwhelmed or worried about his routes. And you read it, it's like, oh, he's slow, he's sluggish. I expected to see somebody that's maybe a better athlete than a football player. And I'm not watching this through Bill's rose-colored glasses. I think I've been doing this long enough to have a clear view of what I'm seeing. I thought route running was a strength of his game, particularly on the intermediate routes. He has a good shake. He has good lateral agility. I think he has a fantastic feel for zone coverage and how to get open. And I counted numerous times. And I know your guys on Cover One, Eric Turner, Anthony, that they will do this way better than I have the ability to do. So just take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. I counted numerous times where he was open, presented himself as open, and the quarterback play, whether it was Jordan Travis or the backup, threw him into contested catches situations. And that goes down as always any contested catch situation. I'm a numbers guy. I think the numbers tend to not lie generally, but I felt like in a lot of ways, Keon Coleman's contested catch percentage was more on his quarterback. And I think when you get a quarterback like Josh Allen, who's challenging for all pro spots and MVP trophies that can hit him on time, hit him in those windows, get the ball to him when it's supposed to get there, I think he has a chance to be a more productive player in the NFL than college because his athleticism pops. And I think he has a thirst for the game. He's only 20 years old right now. And I think the sky is the limit for this kid. And I'm excited about what he can do, not only early, but, in the years to come.
Yes, and Keon Coleman is my number 3 on my list. I already said James Cook was my 2, so we've aligned in not the same way, but we got the same names of the players. And for Coleman being my 3, it was for those same reasons. I think when you're Brandon Beane and you explicitly say, "Hey, he is going to be our X. He is not a slot. We might work him in there from time to time, but he is our X." That tells me, okay, well, I'm going to start looking at you as an X. I can't say no until I see otherwise. So I'm really glad you made the point really about his middle of the field ability, because that's where I think Keon Coleman can shine. And when you look at how Stephon Diggs was being used in the second half of last year, when you look at how they kind of rotated receivers to have different ones going up top, I feel like that is going to continue more so. And with Keon Coleman having that strength to be in the middle of the field, that kind of makes me a little more calm, because it's not like you're asking Coleman to stretch the field every single snap, right? You're not going to make him go run post or run corner or something every time and hope it works and hope he can make this cool contested catch. What you're going to do is you're going to use that skill set sparingly, in moderation. Hey, we'll have you go up and maybe Josh will throw you a 50-50 ball. But if we're asking you to catch this like maybe once, maybe twice a game, that's a little more palatable and a little more attainable in my eyes than just explicitly forcing him to just go upfield every time and hope that works. But his strength is really in the middle of the field. The way he hitches, the way he can navigate zone, the way he can find those soft spots. Those are things Coleman are very capable of doing at a very young age. And when you watch him, not just at FSU, but also going back to Michigan State, he did really well in that, so much to a point where I was actually watching some games from him from 2022, and I was yelling at my monitor because I saw that his quarterback wouldn't throw to him when he got this really nasty step off on it was like an out. I think it was like 10 yards down the field a couple of times. And I'm seeing this and I'm like, Josh is throwing that ball to him. Like, Josh would get a first down on this play. Like, this is something that Coleman could actually do in the NFL. And data is powerful, but data can be deceiving. And that's why I think it's important that when Bills fans look at Keon Coleman, they do look at more than just the numbers, because his production profile isn't that great. I think he hit the most he did in college was a little over 700 yards at Michigan State. But those traits, which Brandon Beane loves, are there. Is he the fastest guy? No. Does he separate like other guys in the draft class? No. He can get a step, but he's not this 2 feet separator that's going to just blow by you. But again, savviness for the middle of the field, in-game recognition, having the athletic ability to pull down a contested ball if you need to, which you saw evidently was a bit of a problem for the Bills offense because it seemed like no one could win those 50-50s, and sure hands, something that I think really matters when you talk about Keon Coleman and really the construction of the pass catchers for the Buffalo Bills is the steady, solid hands. The fact that these guys don't have drop issues, the fact that you can rely on them. And when I go back to the point I've made over and over again about building a rapport with Josh Allen and making him comfortable, apart from just trying to construct a good line for him and apart from building chemistry up, you not dropping the ball will help with that exponentially, especially as a rookie receiver. And I think that was a part of when they looked at Keon Coleman and scouted him that they really liked, especially for someone that had to deal with contested catches. And I know that rate is lower at FSU, but I promise you, when it's off of a slant, or if it's something a little bit shorter down the field, he's coming down with that ball and he's punishing you when it's in his hands. So I am very excited to watch Keon Coleman, and I think that he is going to be a vital part of this receiving room. You took him in the second round at pick 33. He better be. So I agree with you, Josh. He is someone that I'm excited to watch, and I'm curious who you have as number 1, but I think I know where you're going with it, and I think I have the same one.
Yeah, John Robert is reading minds in the chat. Dalton Kincaid. I think when you look at this Bills group, there's projection, and you can get excited about Keon Coleman. The one we didn't even mention the fact he was a punt returner in college, and boy, does that show when he gets in the open field. And Khalil Shakir was a punt returner. And Curtis Samuel was never a punt returner, but he can be used in that Debo role where they use him as almost a running back. So the Bills wanted to get better at run after catch. And these are three guys that in the open field know exactly what to do with the ball. Plus James Cook, plus Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid really is, though, the one blue chip prospect here. Like, we like Keon Coleman, but he was a second round pick and he wasn't, at least in the draft, in the group with the top 3 or even top 4 on most boards. Dalton Kincaid was by and large the best tight end last year and considered one of the best tight ends in the draft since Kyle Pitts. And I think we saw that last year, how smooth he was with his route running, how natural of a catcher he was, how quickly he and Josh Allen got that rapport over the middle of the field. After Joe Brady took over, you look at tight end production, Dalton Kincaid was top 10 in yards, top 10 in receptions, top 12 in yards among all tight ends. He was third on the Bills as far as overall yardage, only slightly behind Diggs and Shakir. He played the second most snaps of all the pass catchers on the offense, only behind Diggs. So I think Dalton Kincaid is primed for a big role. My one caveat, the one thing that concerns me is I am concerned about the Dawson Knox role. I think Dawson Knox is a fine football player. I think maybe we, in our love affair, and I say we as fans, our love affair with Dalton Kincaid have almost like turned the corner too hard on Dawson Knox, because he feels like he's in the way of Kincaid shining. I wonder if they're gonna fully commit to Kincaid like they did last year when they were forced to with the Knox injury, and boy did he shine. Kincaid needs to be the one, and Knox can come in 2 tight end situations. I would not force the 12 personnel, and as long as they empower Kincaid, I think he has a chance to be a top 5, even top 3 tight end in the league. I think he's that good. And I think this is an offense that's going to throw for volume. They're going to throw for 4,500 yards. I truly believe that, even without Diggs, even without Davis. And I think Dalton Kincaid has a chance with what's around him this year to really push for 1,000-yard season. I think it's all set up for him to have a monster year.
And knowing that Stephon Diggs is gone and that you need a new number 1 target, this is your candidate to do it. And I think it's very possible that 1,000-yard mark could happen. I'm kind of tempering my expectations, again, given that Dawson Knox still is in the room, but also with how much this ball is going to be distributed around the offense, that it might be more in the periphery of like an 800-yard season. But that's just me trying to set my floor in case he exceeds it so I can be even more hyped than anybody else watching. And just to further on what you were saying too, so when I went back and looked, so he was 6th in overall receptions for tight ends with 81 in the regular season and postseason. If you just did regular season, it was 7th with 73. He was 9th in receiving yards in regular and post with 777, but 10th if you just did regular. And then out wide for tight ends, this was something I thought was interesting. He had the 7th most snaps with 83 and jumped to 102 after 2 games in the playoffs. So I think Dalton Kincaid is poised to have a very big year. I think the cat's out of the bag that this team loves Dalton Kincaid, that they want to lean on Dalton Kincaid, that the second half of last year proved that they view him as the tight end 1. I don't think it means total Dawson Knox erasure. I think Dawson Knox is still going to get involved, especially in the red zone, but really more in the capacity of just, a tight end 2 role. However, they've done it traditionally in the past with other tight ends that they've had. Maybe if you look back to the days of Knox and Croft, it could be something a little similar, except Kincaid ratio would probably be way higher, and I could view it being like a 70-30 spread. But I think Dalton Kincaid is just poised to have a big year. He had a great start to his career with the stats I laid out for you before. I think in the second half, he was starting to find his groove a bit. And what I really liked watching was in that Steelers playoff game, in the New England game, different times of the year, you saw them trying to air the ball out downfield to him a bit more. And with his route running ability, his savviness, and again, his ability to navigate zone, which is one of the best in the tight end room, around the league, I think that he is going to be very productive for the Buffalo Bills. And why I put him at number 1, why you put him at number 1, I assume so, is because him taking that leap in year 2 is not just good for Dalton Kincaid. It's not just good for Josh Allen, but it creates a different level of identity for the Buffalo Bills. Because if you get a year two leap of Dalton Kincaid, where you're talking top 5 production or even like top 7 or whatever it may be, and you just say, wow, this kid can ball out, and defenses are actually scared of defending him because he's getting himself open so easily with his route running, that's going to change a lot of the ways that teams are now going to defend the Bills. And I think that they're banking on this, because should you have to maybe set up some sort of doubling for Dalton Kincaid, or should you maybe have to shift the way you defend, there is a skill position player at each level of this offense that can burn you in a different way. If you want to talk about maybe lighter boxes because you're playing for more coverage with Kincaid being such a problem, and you're talking about James Cook or maybe even Ray Davis having the ability to run down on you, that's one way that they can beat you. Or if you want to talk about Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, guys that we know and we have talked about being good middle of the field options that can get themselves open in a variety of ways, then that's another way that they can beat you. So Dalton Kincaid is number one, not just for the fact that we're excited about him and not just for the fact that he is, blue chip prospect that we took, that we're banking on his upside, but the potential leap of Dalton Kincaid means the leap of the Buffalo Bills offense, especially in a post-Diggs world where there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding them. So, Josh, any final thoughts on this, the offense, anything in general?
I think the theme of this show, the thing I want everybody to take away from this show is if we were to do this show last year and we were honest with ourselves, there was a lot of concern about what's in the pipeline for the Buffalo Bills. The best players on this team were all aging, and we saw that transpire, like Tre'Davious White, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Mitch Morse, all getting older, Stephon Diggs getting older. And you were just like, the Bills have not really drafted in bulk like they did this year. They've traded up. And, who's going to be that middle linebacker? Holy cow, Terrell Bernard couldn't have had a worse rookie season. He couldn't even get on the field in a playoff game where you and I were playing defensive line for the Bills. Like, I think the way 2023 went, it was a disappointing end, but both on offense and then defense that we're going to talk about soon, the pipeline feels so much more filled by guys who are either second or third year players, like Spencer Brown, who we didn't mention because he's 26, who stepped up and went from being not sure if he's an NFL starter to holy cow, not sure where we'd be without that guy. And there's a couple guys on the defensive side that we're going to get into here that are challenging for the best players on the entire unit. And I think offensively, it's important to know the losses of Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs are jarring. There is a lot of young talent on this team, and the guys like Khalil Shakir, Josh Allen, Deion Dawkins, Keon Coleman, James Cook, Dalton Kincaid, all players, Osiris Torrance, drafted by Brandon Beane, who I was told doesn't know how to draft. Yet when you stack his draft history up against everybody else in the league, considering he's been drafting in the late 20s the last 5 years, I think people need to zoom out a little bit and realize that the Bills have one of the best GMs in the sport, who's not perfect because, by the way, nobody else is. Take a look at what's going on with a Chiefs recent draft pick in the news off the field.
Yeah, I personally wouldn't do that if I were that Chiefs wide receiver. I would simply just not do that thing that he possibly did. But anyways, without going further down that road, yes, I agree with everything you said, Josh. This is just I feel like, and why I wanted to do this episode again was just to kind of spread some optimism in our fan base when it comes to the younger talent, because the team's a question mark, no doubt about it, because we're seeing for the first time since we really got Trey White and we got Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde and we made that Stephon Diggs trade a couple years ago, the first real transition that they've had during Josh Allen's time. And it's uncharted waters in a way, because like when they got Josh Allen, they were building this foundation and they were building it progressively each year, where you saw with Josh Allen's development, so too came a new tier of players, whether it was receivers that they added, a new running back, or that in 2020 with the massive trade that ends up shaping the identity of the team for the next 4 seasons, because Stephon Diggs was such a huge target. And you also had those veterans in the defense concurrently going at the same time. This is a brand new Bills team you're going to see. Obviously familiar faces, but there's going to be changes, as we've already seen from how they've drafted, who they've signed in free agency, who they've cut. And I think it's important that we encourage fans to just realize that there is a lot of really prospective young talent. And will it work? No one knows. Probably not. I can't tell you. As much as I could say, I could see the reasons for why these players could work this season, and I'm hoping they do, because it would mean another few years of Buffalo Bills contention and hopefully getting that Super Bowl. So really like that you made that point. We're going to pivot over to defense. But before we do, I have two people that you might know that are interested in telling you about something very, very important. And rather than me boring you, rather than Josh boring you with it, I'm going to let Greg Thompson and Aaron Quinn excite you with the Cover 1 pass. Gentlemen, what do you got?
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
Yes, for just 60 gold doubloons, you can become an insider, a Cover 1 Pass member. That One Pass is the lifeblood of our network, as it allows us to have access to all of the tools that we use to provide the content for you, the viewer, the listener, the supporter, every single week, every single day on this network. So if you are a member already, we truly appreciate you. And if you are not yet but interested, the link is in the description below. For just 60 Crescent Shards, you can become a member. And I promise you, it is well worth your time. So again, thank you all for watching. If you're watching right now, if you're joining us late, please, if you could be so kind to drop a like on this video, that would mean the world to me, as it helps the video out tremendously. It also helps get our network and our content to more eyes of prospective Bills fans, football fans that might be looking for some insight onto the team. So all of you, I appreciate you. Let's move on with this discussion. And Josh, we got to talk about the defense now. We didn't forget about defense. It's just as important, if not more important, in the eyes of some, especially Sean McDermott. I'm just kidding. But let's talk about the young players that we are excited to watch on the defensive side of the ball, starting with number 5. Who do you have?
So we had the same 5 players on offense. I feel confident we're not going to have the same 5 players on defense. No. I will tell you, there were a couple draft picks I really wanted to put on my list, but I couldn't quite get there. I think my 5th guy is going to be surprising to a lot of people. It's going to be Kaiir Elam.
Okay.
And I want to put Kaiir Elam into a little bit of context here. One, the Bills just had a draft 2 weeks ago, and they drafted 10 players. If Kaiir Elam was in that draft, he'd be the 3rd youngest player on that list. So that's one. 2, this is Kaiir Elam, who the last 2 years, he only started 4 games last year. So the last 2 years, or he only played in 4 games last year. He's only played 17 games, whether it's due to injury or whether it's due to where he ranked on the depth chart. So you can kind of look at it as if he's only really played 1 season in the league. But yet, outside of Rasul Douglas, who was just magnificent, he leads all cornerbacks in interceptions over that time. Do I think Kaiir Elam is going to end up being a starting boundary cornerback star of this team? No, I don't. But I will say, that's funny about making him wear mittens, because boy, does he get grabby out there. I have not given up hope on him. And I think the fault is on both sides of this. I think Sean McDermott has had security blankets in house, whether it's Dane Jackson, really primarily Dane Jackson, or whether it's Tre'Davious White, or whether it's like trusting Josh Norman off the street, or Xavier Rhodes off the street, guys that he would just put on the field instead of developing this kid that you invested a premium draft pick in. All of those security blankets are gone. The boundary cornerbacks on this team are Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas. Taron Johnson is in the slot. Kaiir Elam is the next man up. There is no Dane Jackson that has starting experience in your scheme. So Kaiir Elam is going to play this year. Christian Benford has yet to finish an entire season injury-free. There will be a moment when Kaiir Elam is on the field and he has 2 interceptions in 2 different playoff games, one of which I maintain they would not have won that Miami game without his interception. He also has intercepted Patrick Mahomes in Arrowhead in the end zone. So not a bad resume for a guy that we all label as a bust. I would say my optimism level is not super high. My intrigue level is high. It's year 3. It's not year 6. And we saw Spencer Brown last year take a jump in year 3. We've seen players from all walks of life take jumps in year 3. This is a guy that went from primarily man press in college to now you're going to be a zone corner in the NFL. Had a lot of us, 2 of us on this show, raising our hands saying, wait a minute, this doesn't make a lot of sense for a plug and play guy. But I think there's at least enough intrigue. And the fact that the Bills made it through the entire draft season without trading him, which I thought was a very real possibility, tells me they like him enough and they're intrigued enough. I'm curious about what he can become. I haven't given up hope. And I think there's at least a chance that they have something there that can still be meaningful for this team.
I like that pick. He's not on my list, mainly because I think there's a different young corner who is obvious because there's not many to choose from. It's DeMarcus Ingram. No, I'm kidding. There's a different young corner. I'm sure Ingram could be good, by the way. Like as depth, I'm fine with it. If he developed into something, that's great. I'm not trying to badmouth Ingram here, but I think Kaiir Elam's story is not concluded for the Buffalo Bills. I think he has had a rough couple of years with a myriad of issues that have plagued him. If you want to talk about maybe having a harder time adjusting to the different style of play that they're asking him to do, because like you said, he was traditionally a man press corner, and you're entering a very zone heavy defense that is asking you to pick your spot and be in the right place and also play with a lot of discipline. You could tell that Kaiir Elam, like other picks that Brandon Beane made, was a very big traits pick. And with traits picks, that means that these guys are projects. And with projects, it takes a few years of development to get the most out of these guys most of the time. Sometimes you get lucky and they acclimate quickly. Sometimes it takes longer than expected. But we took a project corner, and in 2 years, a lot of people wrote him off or are done with him and whatever. And I'm not happy with how it's gone so far. And I think there is a lot left to be desired with some of the play he has had on the field, even despite the interceptions. But I don't think his story as a Buffalo Bill is concluded. I think Kaiir Elam has a lot of traits that can make him a very good corner. I think he has good ball tracking ability. I think he has good skills when it comes to playing the ball and being in the spot he needs to be in. But I think it's just inconsistent. And I think if you can kind of refine those tools a bit, then you're going to get a lot more out of him. And I think when you talk about the addition of Coach Adai, who's going to be someone who, comes from a one high man heavy system and maybe tries to coach that up and play that a little bit more, then there is a possibility that Elam could have a much better rebounding season. In fact, I think it's more likely that he does, because I just see that this kid is a 23-year-old corner taken again as someone that you meant to develop. It hasn't gone the way you wanted it to for a few years, but this is the year now where he's got to put up his end of the bargain. He's got to come out in camp, do a really good job, or at least show that he's getting it. And if he does, I think he's poised to play a pretty good season, whether that's being depth with eventual room to start if someone goes down with an injury, which unfortunately is likely given the track record of the two quarters we have currently starting. And that's why I'm not really out on Kaiir Elam and why I think that there is a potential for him to start, or at the very least get meaningful snaps for the Buffalo Bills this season. So that's a great pick. He wasn't on my list, but I was considering putting him there. Again, I have a different corner on here, but my number 5, I cheated. I have 2 names, but they count as one in my eyes because I couldn't pick one or the other. In fact, I literally just made this decision while we were live because I saw the name and I'm like, but the other name makes sense too. And like, there's a reason for both of them. So I'm just going to say both of them. And I don't know if either of these guys are on your list, Josh, but number 5 is a hybrid of Dwayne Carter and Javon Solomon. And why I choose them, I'll start with Dwayne Carter. You have him coming in to start as your rotational 3 tech. And no, I didn't just put him on this list because I freaking love Dwayne Carter. I love Dwayne Carter, but he's not on this list just because I'm a huge fan. I actually see the vision, the fit, and I think where his importance will lie as far as being a rotational 3 tech has more impact on this defense as a whole than maybe people think with him starting in the league on a certain amount of snaps, a limited rotation. I think that when you look at the construction of the Bills defensive line and how often they rotate interior, exterior rushers, and you looked at what they did when they brought Jordan Phillips in and Jordan Phillips was healthy to start. And I'm not saying they're the same player as much as I'm saying that having an additional rotational pass rusher. You saw that when Phillips was healthy to complement a healthy Ed Oliver and a healthy Daquan Jones, that pass rush ability of this D-line was unrelenting. The interior presence, the game-wrecking ability, blowing things up in the backfield, disrupting lanes for quarterbacks, never stopped. It was a persistent menace that unfortunately in the past couple of years had been halted due to consistent injury. I think the Buffalo Bills have been seeking a stable rotation for so long that could stay healthy, stay upright, and keep that attack going. And with Dwayne Carter starting as your rotational three tech, someone who has a really nice bull rush, really nice get off the line, a really high motor and big aggression when it comes to his pass rush ability, I think you're going to get that from him. And I think that his ability to rotate in behind Ed Oliver, even behind Daquan Jones as a pass rusher to start and bring that presence to a different level every single week is huge for how productive this pass rush could potentially be. And also huge, and I know other people have made this point on our network, for Daquan Jones and maybe preserving him if you're talking about the concerns over his health. I think that Dwayne Carter offers you this ability to constantly rotate without losing that level of pass rush ability. And I think that if you can maintain that, you are going to see a very productive defense, because if it's starting up front with the menacing pass rush, I think that's going to benefit coverage. I think that's going to benefit your linebackers. I think it trickles, well, if you look at it as down or up, depending on how you view it, but trickles down into other parts of the defense. So that's why I put him. And it's kind of a similar thing with Javon Solomon, because I know they took him late in the day 3. I know that this is another guy that is a freak athlete, but he's a bit smaller, 6'1", so a bit undersized for his position. But it's a bit of a thin edge room right now. You talk about Epineza, talk about Rousseau, talk about Von Miller, who's a massive question mark, and then they bring in Dwayne Smoot and Casey Toohill. Well, I like Smoot a lot. It's a 1-year deal. And then Toohill is also a 1-year deal to be rotational pass rushers. So for Javon Solomon to be a rookie coming into this defense with a thin room in front of him, if those traits that he had at Troy, which is having a variety of pass rush moves, being an aggressive high motor pass rusher with leading the FBS in sacks, I think that this kid actually has a path to being a very, not massive, but significant contributor to this defensive line that, again, for the same reasons I listed for Carter, I'll list for Solomon. A pass rush specialist that can come in on downs, maybe rotate in, keep the presence alive while not having to afford, maybe having Vaughn come in for too many snaps at his age, or having to worry about, guys that might get hurt having to come in or having a fall off in pass rush ability. I just can see a path where this kid can get a meaningful spot on this roster, even as a rotational edge rusher, and be successful with it. And him doing so, and why I have him and Carter on this list, means that pass rush ability maintains a very high status, something that the team can rely on. It's something that I think Sean McDermott would love to have and make this defense stronger as a whole. So those are my 5s. I apologize for cheating. I know I broke the rule, but that's 5. What do you got for 4, Josh?
I mean, I would be the biggest hypocrite in the world, Joe, if I said no breaking the rules on these lists. I love Dwayne Carter. He was the hardest one to keep off my list. I actually lied. I do have a rookie on my list. I don't know what I was thinking, but and he's next. Spoiler alert. Dwayne Carter, to me, checks quite a few boxes for this team. Last year, especially when Daquan Jones was out, when Ed Oliver was off the field, this team's pass rush, especially on the interior, just did not exist. There was like one splash game from Poona Ford. Linval Joseph rushing the passer, that's not his game. So I think Dwayne Carter has it. And then Tim Settle was kind of a nothing. And then Jordan Phillips came in spurts, but then he couldn't stay on the field.
Yeah.
Dwayne Carter has a chance to really stabilize that backup 3 technique role. And I think twofold, that can help keep Ed Oliver fresh. Now we have a 17-game season. Ed Oliver had never played 700 snaps in a season, and last year he was well over 800 snaps. The Bills drained everything out of Ed Oliver they could because they had no choice. There was no Von Miller. There was no Daquan Jones. They weren't. I know Leonard Floyd had double-digit sacks, folks, but like that, the least impressive double-digit sack season you'll ever see on a down-in, down-out basis. That's I don't want to be considered a hater, but as far as like consistently pressuring the quarterback, I think this has a chance to be good for Ed Oliver, and it has a chance to be good for me, because I don't have to hear people like Joe tell me next year in the draft that the Bills are going to spend a first-round pick on a defensive tackle. We got our defensive tackles. We have Ed Oliver. We have Dwayne Carter. I liked Dwayne Carter a lot. I thought he could have gone in the 2nd round. I know he was Chris Sims' 3rd overall defensive tackle in the draft. I think it's a perfect scheme fit. And then quickly on Solomon, I was impressed that the Bills have diverted from the prototype edge that they have drafted in Boogie Basham, Greg Rousseau, AJ Epinesa, signed in Mario Addison, the long rangy, non-edge bending types that are good against the run, the Shaq Lawson types. But, they got Von Miller for a half a season. It was excellent. History is going to tell us that Von Miller was a terrible signing. People are going to forget just how excellent he was until he tore his ACL in Detroit.
Right.
But I think that opened the Bills' eyes to a different kind of prototype of a player. And I think Javon Sullivan, if he finishes his career as a terrible run stopper, it won't matter. Your one role on this team is on third down, rush the passer. Sean McDermott has to grow, though. He's always been you have to earn the right to rush the passer by how you play on first and second down. Let's change that a little bit, Sean. Your team earns the right to third down. Let's go ahead and just throw your best pass rushers out there. If it's Javon Sullivan, so be it. But I'm excited about him. I think there's a path to the roster for him.
Yeah, and I think that they don't have the luxury of really waiting as often, unless he really is having that much of a struggle in camp where it's like, okay, we can't start this guy or can't have him be a rotational pass rush specialist because he's just not getting it or he doesn't look any good. I think that this kid has a good understanding of the position he plays. And like you said, they've strayed away from that archetype of edge rusher. So now, even though you have a slightly undersized guy, I mean, there have been undersized guys that have played in the league in the past that have done pretty well. So I'm not really too worried about it because, again, Babbage talks about playing above your size and being a shadow. If this kid has a really great just athletic profile and just a lot of production in college, and you're bringing him into a room that outside of Epineza, Rousseau, and a 35-year-old Von Miller has basically nothing to it, you got to give this kid a shot, and I think he's going to earn it and do well with it. But who's this rookie you got, Josh? You mentioned a rookie. I want to hear this. I think I know who it is.
I think he's on your list too. Cole Bishop, second round pick. When he was picked, this was such a weird moment for me. I wanted a receiver. I really was obsessed with the idea of double dipping. And I'm trying to think back the receiver that I wanted. It may have been Javon Baker. I don't remember specifically. Draft weekend's kind of a blur, man. But when Cole Bishop was the pick, I saw the name come across and I was so focused on receiver that I had thought Cole Bishop was already picked. And I was like, oh, wow, what a perfect fit.
Yeah.
Because and I think there's a lot of folks that out there read, oh, he's a better box safety. And your brain is like, oh, man, this is like a 1990s safety that only is like a linebacker. No. Cole Bishop is going to instantly be one of the best athletes on the entire team. Think of him, though, as the Jordan Poyer replacement. Don't think of him as the Micah Hyde replacement. He plays very similar to Jordan Poyer, where he plays down in the box. He plays that robber role. He certainly, I think, has the athleticism and the skill set to grow into an all-around safety that could even handle that deep third in time. He's just not there yet. But that's where I say he needs to be on the field right away. And what a beautiful landing spot. I know people are going to say, oh, what about Kyer Elam? But Sean McDermott, and we're going to give credit where credit's due, Leslie Frazier, who's not here anymore, they're batting about 1,000 with maximizing DB's potential. Tre'Davious White was not considered a blue chip prospect in that draft. He was a fringe first rounder who turned into an all-pro player. Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer were afterthought free agents that turned into all-pro players. Taron Johnson was a day 3 flyer that turned into an all-pro player. We're going to talk about a cornerback that was drafted in the same draft as Kyer Elam, who has turned into a solid starter that you don't even worry about on the defense anymore. They know how to maximize their defensive backs. I want to see Cole Bishop on the field. All due respect, Taylor Rapp, who had the interception that clinched the division. I personally feel much better about him as that third safety than I do about him starting down in and down out, particularly against teams like the Dolphins, who I think can run him off the field with their speed. I want Cole Bishop to play right away. If he makes mistakes, I will live with it. And I want Sean McDermott to empower his rookies this year to make mistakes. I think he has a chance to be a dynamite pick for the Bills that could end up making a Pro Bowl before his rookie contract is up.
Firmly agree. Cole Bishop is my number 3 on this list. And, the hybrid nature of his game where he can play box safety, but also play free safety, which he played more free safety at Utah, stat-wise. That's what you want. And I think Thomas talked about this and we might have talked about it a few weeks ago, but I think that their goal with the safety room, especially with just getting younger, is also guys that can do it all in a way, right? Like guys that can play that center field position, but also play closer to the line. And that's why you bring in Mike Edwards, who has that similar profile too. I love the Cole Bishop pick. It made a ton of sense. I liked him at the combine. I liked what I watched from him. I think when you talk about pure athletics, as far as how he can navigate the field, he's got the speed to do it. And as long as his processing can catch up, up, he'll be the perfect candidate for someone in a Sean McDermott defense who's going to get a big assignment to just pick his spots and be there when he needs to be. But also the absolute dog mentality that Cole Bishop plays with that I think provides instant attitude to his secondary with a lot of question marks. Listen, we don't know if he's going to have his role down pat right away. And I'm not going to expect him to because he's a young kid playing this role in a very complicated defense. But what I can say is if Cole Bishop has an opportunity to pounce on a running back in the open field and he's got the angle and the lane to do it, he's going to make him feel it. And it's going to be awesome. And I'm going to love every second of it. I think the aggression that he brings, the ability to tackle, that ball hawking nature, but also that bloodhound nature where you're talking about an aggressive Sean McDermott defense that maybe wants to bring you in a safety blitz every now and then is something that I'm looking forward to watching. And I think that if you could start him out, like you said, in that Jordan Poyer role where you play him a bit closer to the line or maybe more of a strong safety type while he develops with maybe room to eventually become that free safety, that further back option, unless you think that you'd like to keep him there and then eventually draft that option if Mike Edwards doesn't stay as a long-term piece or Taylor Rapp isn't doing the best job at it, then this is a guy that I think that even if you're going down that path is still going to hold it down closer to the box and someone that I'm truly excited to watch and a pick that I'm really happy they made. He just feels like a McDermott pick. Like, bottom line, just the way he plays.
And I think he has sneaky good man coverage ability. I think he has a chance to be that moving chess piece that they always tried to turn Saran Neal into. Like when they played the Chiefs, there were several times they're like, all right, Saran, you have Travis Kelce. And to Saran Neal's credit, he did as well on Travis Kelce as any Bills defender did. I know he's kind of a meme when it comes to defensive positioning, but nobody stops Travis Kelce. I think Cole Bishop has a chance to grow into that guy that can be that tight end eraser. And you see some of the tight ends that are coming into this league every single year. You certainly need that on your defense.
For sure. And it's, again, why I put him at number 3, why I think he's an integral part. And I think that, again, kind of like what I said earlier about maybe Coleman getting like a quick start and getting that, or maybe like Carter and Solomon getting quick starts is how I feel about Bishop too. If you can hit the ground running, that's big. I mean, the safety room has a lot of questions. We're losing 2 All-Pros that we are so accustomed to watching that you need to kind of find quick stability there. And I think that this is a great candidate for that. Someone that I feel, again, for all the reasons I listed, the traits that he has, the IQ he plays with, getting coached up by a guy who has coached up multiple All-Pro safeties. It's a pick that I'm excited for and someone that I think is going to be a vital contributor. But I want to hear your next pick because I have him as 3. You had him as 4. So that means we're on your 3. So who is your number 3, Josh?
My 3 is going to be a guy that I think the majority of Bills fans would say he's been good. I would like more. Greg Rousseau. And to me, I think if you judge him just by his sacks, I think he's probably left you wanting more. Because he got the quarterback to the ground a lot in college. He was just a 1-year player. He is excellent against the run. And I realize it's 2024. Who cares about the run? Well, I'll tell you, if you don't care about the run, you're going to get run on, and it makes it exponentially harder to stop the pass if your defensive linemen are bad against the run. And I think he came into the league one of the best run stopping edges already in the sport, in my opinion. He just had such a great feel for it. I don't know that he's ever going to be that consistent double-digit sack guy year in and year out, Joe. I just think circumstantially the Bills rotate so heavily at edge that it's going to be tricky to get there. I don't think he has that pass rush first mentality. I think he is worried about setting the edge. He only has 17 career sacks, but in a situation you already mentioned where Von Miller, a super big wild card, still 2 years removed off the ACL, 35 years old. AJ Epinesa is a player that I think we both probably like, but he's better in that third edge role than the fourth. Leonard Floyd is gone, for better or for worse. And Greg Rousseau is going into a situation where the Bills, they picked up his 5th-year option for 2025. No team wants to play a player on his 5th-year option. They'd much rather extend him. That is a anchor on your salary cap. And Brandon Beane just got rid of all the anchors this offseason.
Yep.
So I think the Bills are certainly going to want to extend Gregory Rousseau this coming offseason, but he's going to have to give them a reason to do so. I think circumstances could play out where he sees a snap increase similar to what Oliver did last year, just by necessity, by what's around him. If he can stay healthy, maybe he does push double digits this year. And I think he has such a tool bag of skills when it comes to length and athleticism that you just can't coach, that there is a possibility he develops into that dominant pass rusher. I'm not banking on it, but I think he's going to be the best pass rusher on this team, and that's super important in 2024. And we'll see how high the sky is for him. But he's very important to me because I think in a lot of ways, as his season goes, will dictate how the Bills do all overall on the defensive line.
Yes, firmly agree with that. Greg Rousseau is my number 2 on my list. And I like this comment from Eric that says, Groot is the new Ed Oliver. Fans underrate what he brings to the table, career year income. Well, first and foremost, I hope a career year is incoming. I would love that from him. But that is the part of it, too, that when I talked about Kyer Elam, I'll say the same thing for Rousseau. You got him when he was super young. He is only 24 years old. And he was a project because he only played 1 year in college and only played edge rusher for, I think it was like a combined 4 years. It was like very new to the position, and all the traits are there. 6'6", 250 plus, insane wingspan, and the run defending part of his game has developed quite well. And I trust him immensely on the edge to seal it and to be able to stop any running back that's coming to his lane. So that part of it, I'm not really worried about, but he's my number 2 because I think his growth as a pass rusher, similar to the reasons I mentioned for Dwayne Carter, Javon Solomon, and other D linemen, his growth as a pass rusher is the growth of the defense. I mean, when you're talking about him, a traitsy guy that you allocated a lot of time, a lot of value in because he was a first round pick, and you can finally start seeing a return on investment in that pass rush game where it's not just, okay, he's a niche edge defender that's really good at stopping the run and is good for like 5-6 sacks a year, but someone that can actually reach that double-digit mark. I think that that's when you're finally going to just realize how vital he is to the D-line. And it's not because he isn't already someone that I think is important, but because that part of his game developing will make him such a complete player, such a formidable edge presence, that it's something that you could truly build around on a very young player's eventual extension. Something that I hope can happen because I really like Gregory Rousseau. But now that if you were to get that and then also pair it with Ed Oliver, who you know what he is, he's a menace as a 3-tech, and then eventually allocate assets to maybe extending the depth on the other side of the line, because even though we have Epineza, we will eventually lose Von Miller. Like Solomon, if he pans out, great, but if he doesn't, there's a whole class of edge rushers coming this year. Greg Rousseau allows you to build the future of the D-line. He allows you to work around him, and it's something that I really want to see. I thought he was trajecting really well last year, projecting, whatever, until he got hurt after the Miami game, which of course, it seems like every season that's becoming a trend, and I don't like it. So what I will say is Gregory Rousseau needs to stay healthy. And if he can stay healthy, then I think the early season momentum that he has had the past couple of seasons will carry further into his season and ultimately lead to a much more productive year. And even if 2024 Greg Rousseau nets 8 sacks, right? That's an improvement. To me, that's good. I'll take it. I will love it because I think also with the way this defense is constructed and the way teams play against the Bills, it hasn't been a really high sack. Like, actually, that's not true. They led for a time, I think, last season. But I think with Gregory Rousseau specifically, I don't need him to be like a double-digit sack guy. It'd be great, but I just want to see continued productivity as a pass rusher. I want to see effectiveness. I want to see people doubling him up, trying to really respect his game. Because one thing that I looked up when I looked up Gregory Rousseau's stats, out of the qualifying edge rushers, so that's 50% of snaps played, he was 14th in pass rush productivity, which is a stat that basically it basically tells you how much pressure this player is causing on trying to give you a rate and understanding of their presence and how much it actually affects the pocket. And it doesn't always equate to sacks, but it just kind of shows you what they're causing on their side of the ball. And Gregory Rousseau is 14th in that. And even though that's not top 5, that's showing you that pass rush juice is there, that it's starting to come into fruition a bit. And he's still a young player. So for me, he's my number 2 because I think that his development, similar to developments of other players that we've listed, is something that really could be something you build around on this defensive line, and overall the identity of your D-line changes the way Gregory Rousseau's development could pan out. So that's why I put him there. But who else you got on this list, Josh?
My number 2 is going to be somebody we've already referenced, Christian Benford. Christian Benford is when you're digging around your couch cushions and you find a $20 bill down there that you didn't even know you had. He was a 6th round pick for this team. And think about his rookie year, 6th round pick, in a year that the Bills spent a first-round pick on a cornerback that they traded up for, joining a team that already had Tre'Davious White and Dane Jackson, and Tre'Davious White was hurt. The Bills are opening up on national TV against the defending Super Bowl champions, and oh, by the way, the Super Bowl MVP Cooper Kupp, and Christian Benford is in the starting lineup. The Bills trusted him from day one, and this was in a phase where Sean McDermott didn't trust a lot of rookies. He is a 2-year starter for this team. He has as many interceptions in his career as touchdowns given up in coverage. That is an insane stat. The one issue with him is he can't stay healthy. He fractured his hand in a game I was at in Detroit on Thanksgiving. On the last play of the game, Detroit's trying to lateral it around, looking for a miracle play, or hits his hand, ends up can't get on the field the rest of the year. Had an oblique injury, had a knee injury in the Steeler game. The only playoff game he's played in for the Bills. He's been on the team the last 2 years. The Bills have played 4 playoff games. He's only played in one of them. It was against the Steelers. He left injured. So he needs more injury luck. But right now, if you were to rank the starters on this defense of who you're most comfortable with, I think Taron Johnson, Terrell Bernard, Ed Oliver, that's about it. I'm not going to say Matt Milano right now because I don't know what that looks like. I want to say Matt Milano, but he's coming off of a broken leg. That's how good I think this kid has been, Christian Benford. And to get him in the 6th round, it's every bit, for those of you that have followed this team for a while, it's Kyle Williams to John McCargo, where they drafted John McCargo in the 1st round, Kyle Williams in the 5th. And it kind of erases itself. I don't think Kyer Elam is John McCargo. At least I hope not. I hope he has a better career than that as a corner. But Christian Benford, Luka's been on him since the very first preseason game he played in. Luka was attending, and he came back and was just screaming with excitement to me, this kid Benford's going to be a star. He's been right. He lets me know every turn of the corner he was right about that. And I cannot be more excited about his future. And to me, he should be a starter on this team for the better part of the next decade.
Agreed. He's my number 4 on this list. I just kept him lower because I felt there was more value in Bishop being a runaway starting safety that I think that would bring a lot of upside to the defense. And then same for Rousseau, but he's on this list. I think Benford really set himself apart from Elam that first year to the point where it's not even just a matter of like him playing good. Like he's been a great corner for this defense, and a defense that primarily plays zone. One thing that really caught my eye, even though I'm not the biggest fan of PFF grades, I've been snake bitten by them a few times, but I do think it's still worth noting just given how they rank people. But amongst cornerbacks that have played 50% of their total snaps, Benford is tied for 7th in overall coverage grade, and in zone coverage, he's ranked number 1. So that is one of those things where you see there's been a payoff for such a late round pick in this defense. And I think that is so important that he maintains this level of play and maintains his health, because the stability at CB2 for so long was under question, right? With Trey White, and then who's opposite for him? We had Levi Wallace, he left. Kyer Elam is who we ended up drafting. And, it didn't pan out, but you had this insurance policy in Benford that ended up being your stability there. I just think that he does need to stay healthy. I agree with you. It's disappointing that he keeps missing time, but what I will say is every time he comes back, it's like he hasn't missed a beat, and he's come up with some really huge plays. So I don't think I can really say too much more on him other than I'm glad he's a part of this defense. I think he is that opposite starter to Rasul Douglas. And Cespinar, I see this comment which says no love for Rasul. No, we love Rasul Douglas, but this episode's just about dudes who are 25 and younger.
So that's a question to me, I think, because I was referencing the players that I trust over Benford, and I didn't. That's my bad. I would rank Rasul Douglas over Benford. That's a good call. I do think you bring up a good point though. Like going into this offseason, it was Tre'Davious White, it was Benford, it was Elam, who's we're not sure about. It was Dane Jackson becoming a free agent, and boy, if Benford wasn't good, what a mess they would be. Rasul Douglas has 1 year left on his deal. Do they want to go long-term with him? I kind of doubt it. So Benford is stabilizing a position that they need to have stabilized. So that was my bad though. I would rank Rasul ahead of Benford as far as guys that I trust on defense.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And just real quick to this comment, I saw this earlier today, so I guess I should acknowledge it. But any part of Buffalo history that unfortunately passes away should be acknowledged. So, I didn't read too much into it as much as I saw it, and may he rest in peace. Part of Buffalo history should never be forgotten. And I'm glad you brought that up, Ronald. Thank you. But when we continue on with this conversation, Christian Benford is someone that I have a lot of trust in despite the injury, and I think he's going to play a very good season, only continue to get better, and I just hope that he can, play a majority of the games this time. But Josh, let's wrap this up with number one. We got Anthony's show coming up in 10 minutes, so I don't want to run too long, but I know you're number one because I think it's my number one too. So is it Terrell Bernard?
It's Terrell Bernard. I'll be very quick since you have notes on him too. He's not even 24 years old yet. And I'm sorry, he turned 25 today. I was looking at the wrong column. By the way, happy birthday Terrell
today.
Bernard.
Oh, happy birthday, Terrell Bernard. Hell yeah.
Unless the Google I looked at was wrong. He turned 25 today, and I didn't see anything on the Bills website about that. But another guy found money. I had such low expectations for him in the linebacker battle going into it from what I had seen the previous year. He started a Jets game his rookie year and was so bad at covering the underneath routes that he couldn't even get back on the field. They picked up AJ Klein off the street and played him every snap on Thanksgiving instead of Terrell Bernard. Couldn't get a jersey in the playoffs when they were down so many defenders and came out of nowhere. You do wonder in training camp when AJ Klein took turns struggling. Tyrell Dotson, who had a very good year, was really struggling in camp. Terrell Bernard got hurt at one point, went away. And all of a sudden he was like door number 3 when door number 1 and 2 were, and it's like, okay, here's another option. And Sean McDermott named him the starter, and boy, did he never look back. Strong case for being the best player on the entire defense. I say that as somebody who loves every bit of Taron Johnson's game. And I say that as somebody who loves every bit of Matt Milano's game. That's how good I think Terrell Bernard was last year. He is an absolute ball hawk when it comes to pass coverage. And I think he's a guy that's going to be a team captain for the next 10 years. And you have a guy that played at a Pro Bowl level I think he has superstar potential. He might get there this year, and he is dirt cheap for the next 2 years. And holy cow, when it comes to roster construction, what a beautiful thing that is.
Yeah, no, the return on investment, which is very little for Terrell Bernard. I mean, I guess it's significant. It's a 3rd round pick, Kyle Brandt's favorite player. But when you look at what the expectations were for Terrell Bernard after last year, there was a myriad of uncertainty from our fan base, including myself. I had fully expected that Terrell Dotson was going to be the one they rolled with to start. And then it would be, if someone could come in for him or it'd be a rotation. But no, Terrell Bernard started, and from game 1, was excellent. I mean, and the only reason that there was any sort of slowdown was because of injuries that he did play through during the season. I looked it up, and as far as linebacker goes, again, qualifying linebackers for the stat, but he led all linebackers in sacks with 8 and pass rush productivity for linebackers on 72 pass rushing snaps, which was less than some of the other, I guess you want to call it, pantheon linebackers in this league. So Terrell Bernard was a stud. I mean, there's no other way to put it. He was the captain of the defense. He got into his role quickly. He was calling things out. Communication was sound. Pass rush ability was sound. Even coverage, not always perfect, but a lot of the times was very good and very disruptive over the middle of the field. And they missed that presence in that Kansas City game. And I think that drafting this kid has been, you were hoping that you'd get this out of him. And at the time when Tremaine Edmonds was still here, it was a question mark, but the vision is there. The role is his, and he's someone that is not only important, but might be the most important member of this defense right now when you talk about the uncertainty that surrounds it, because you now have to turn to different younger players for leadership. And Terrell Bernard is the captain of your front 7. And he's someone that I think they not only are going to lean on, but I think fully expect him to be a team captain this year, just for the reason that he's the signal caller. He's the green dot, and he plays his position exceptionally well only in his 2nd year. And we've seen flashes in the pan before, but the way he plays and the way that McDermott coaches him up, I don't see it being that. I think that this kid is going to be a staple middle linebacker, like you said. And I think that his leadership that he's going to bring to this defense for a much younger unit for the years going forward is something that I'm excited to watch. And I'm really happy that he flourished in this role. So I am quite pleased with Terrell Bernard. I'm glad he was your number 1 too, Josh. And with that, everybody, that is our list. We covered everyone, our 5 players on both sides of the ball. Josh, I had a lot of fun with this discussion. I think that we had a great conversation with a lot of room for hope and optimism with a lot of these players. And I want to thank you again for being here. Please let everybody know where they can find you and what you got going on.
So I am with Bills Chat Podcast. Me and my co-host Luca, we are Bills Chat Pod on Twitter. You can follow us at Bills Chat on YouTube. That we house all of our content there. I know there was an NHL draft lottery that's going on tonight. Luca will be all over that with his Sabres chat. But yeah, follow us on Twitter. Anytime we post new content, we'll put it out there. We're going to even do some sports gaming reviews coming out. There's NCAA football. We're dabbling in the NBA, recording an episode about the NBA playoffs later tonight for our channel. But primarily Buffalo Bills coverage, much like our friends over at Cover One.
Yes, and I have been since I started the show, Josh and Luca were two people that I first contacted, and I remember, getting you guys on the show for the first time and going on yours for the first time. They do great work, guys, and I highly recommend checking them out. Their show is wildly entertaining, especially on draft night. If you haven't gotten a chance to check that out, I'd strongly recommend it. But again, just like these guys are great members of the Bills space, great members of the Bills content creation community, and people that I would recommend you check out their work because they do a lot of hard work, and I'm really excited for you guys and the venture you're on right now. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. All of you in the chat tonight, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Under Review. If you are on YouTube right now or anything that you could stream our content, don't go anywhere because in just 5 minutes, Anthony Prohaska, who will be my guest next week, will be going live with another episode of Disguised Coverage. But for Josh McCarty, for myself, Joe DeRosa, you could find me on Twitter at @show_DeRosa. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Under Review. I hope you have a great night. And as always, go Bills. See you soon.